missing a few, you guys? Are they trickling? Oh, that's all right. As long as they're here, trickling in. Here we go. You guys cold? Yep. Won't be cold next week, though. No, I'm going to make it get warm in here. Let's see. I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to do Deuteronomy. Let's do start the last chapter of Deuteronomy. Then we go over into Joshua. Here we go. The last chapter of Deuteronomy. The last chapter. Is it the last one? That is 34? Is that it? Okay, then Moses went up to the plains of Moab, to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan. All Naphtali and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh and all the land of Judah as far as the western sea. The south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swear to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to you, your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, look at this, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. So Moses is dead. He was buried, and he buried him. The Lord buried him. Look at this. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day. God buried Moses, and nobody knows where he buried him. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim. In other words, he had vision. Nor was his natural vigor diminished. In other words, King James says his strength was not abated. In other words, he had vision and he still had strength when he died. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended after 30 days. Do you remember the last time they were gone for 40 days? When he was gone for 40 days? And he was up on a mountain? And 40 days later, they said, well, he's not coming back. So they went to Aaron, and Aaron got with him and said, hey, let's build a deal here. Let's just build a golden calf. Remember, they took all the earrings and the jewelry and melted it down and turned it into a golden calf. I think they might have learned their lesson here because they realized, I'm not building another golden calf. So Moses dies, and 30 days later, the mourning ended. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses had ended. Watch this. Now, what I'm reading, that's important to use that word is now, because what it says is when it ended, it went into now. In other words, it transitioned. It didn't just end. The page turned. Okay? So when something ends in your life or someone passes away or something happens, yes, it's hard. It hurts, and there's mourning time, and there is an experiencing of a mourning. However, when it ended, there is a time for that to end. You can't grieve forever. Because now, Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom. For Moses had laid his hands on him, so the children of Israel heeded him, and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. But since then, there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. and all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh, before all his servants, and in all his land. And by all that mighty power and all that great terror which Moses performed in the sight of all of Israel. This is so good. Here we go. Are you ready? This is when we can get into the nuts and bolts of this thing. Now Moses died. He was buried. They mourned. Joshua is raised up. Joshua has the spirit of wisdom. Moses laid his hands on him. And here we go. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. As if Joshua didn't know that. But what he was really saying is, listen, this is a time change. This is a season change. This is an opening of a new day. This is a beginning of a new era. This is something brand new. This is significant. This is not like it has always been. This is different. I'm bringing you into a new place right now, so it's time to get a hold of this thing. So now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you. As I said to Moses, he basically said, I said to Moses, I said to you. Verse 4. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites into the great sea, going toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. He's saying it again. That you may observe to do according all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you, be strong and of good courage? Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, pass through this camp and command the people, saying, prepare provisions for yourselves. For within 3 days you will cross over this Jordan to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess. And to the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half the tribe of Manasseh, Joshua spoke to them, saying, remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is giving you rest, and is giving you this land, where you are right now. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock shall stay right here in this land which Moses gave you on this side of the Jordan River. But you have to pass over before your brethren armed, all your mighty men of valor, and help them. Until the Lord has given you your brethren rest, as he has given you, and they also have taken possession of land which the Lord your God has given them, then you shall return to the land of your possession and enjoy it, which Moses, the Lord's servant, gave you on this side of the Jordan toward the sunrise. So they answered Joshua, saying, all that you commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go. Just as we heeded to Moses in all things, so we will heed to you. Only the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your command and does not heed your words, in all that you command him, he shall be put to death. Only be strong and of good courage. Now Joshua the son of Nun sent out 2 men from Acacia Grove to spy secretly, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and came to the house of the harlot named Rahab and lodged there. Let me stop right here for a second. Let's just kind of recap. Okay, you got to realize this mandate that was given to Joshua to cross over the Jordan River, cross over the Jordan into the land of promise, was also the same promise that was given to Moses when he brought the children of Israel out of Egypt 40 years earlier. God told Moses, hey, I want you to bring them out of that place. I want you to take them in this little journey, and then I want you to cross over to the Jordan River. You'll cross two rivers. You'll cross the Red Sea, which is not a river, but you'll cross the Red Sea. You'll cross the other body of water, which is the Jordan River. Along the way, in the journey, I'm going to assemble the people, and I'm going to let them know that I'm their God and they're my people. Okay? So I'm going to take them on this journey. I'm going to reveal myself to them in ways that they've never known before, because I heard their cries back over in Egypt. But I'm not only going to just reveal myself to them, I want them to see themselves to themselves. I want them to see themselves. I want them to be able to understand their insufficiency, so they don't have to worry and be in fear. They can rely on me to get them crossing over that Jordan River. So you have basically three facets of this journey. Egypt, which represents in modern day terms, we could call Egypt the world. Someone that's in sin and bondage. They come up out of that, they cross over the Red Sea, they get water baptized, and now they're on this journey in life of trying to explore all that God has for them that's in front of them. The problem is, though, there's so much of the world still in them that they don't know how to occupy a land and promise that God has for them. In other words, a person that truly gets born again and saved, they're sincere. They come across that, they get baptized, they come through, and now they're ready to pursue what God has for them. The challenge is they know less of what it's like to live in the land of promise or the promises of the kingdom, and more about how to live and survive in the world. So the challenge is, while a person's in this in-between stage, they have to get all of the world system out of them so they can begin to think more like that, because when they get over into the kingdom, they'll lose the kingdom if they don't know how to change the way they think about the kingdom. Does that make sense? So you have a group of people that really have been in slavery for 430 years. So that's like almost 11 generations. It's not like that was just a few years. So, 10 grandpas were telling them about how it was when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were around. I mean, they know the stories, but they weren't living they were building cities and building. I mean, can you imagine, this country hasn't even been around near that long, and look at the strides and the conditions we have in this country. So it would be like somebody, trying to explain to us, man, 400 years ago, you got to know who your ancestors are. You don't know where you even came from. And you're going, and most people don't have a clue 400 years ago. Most people don't have a clue 100 years ago, let alone 400 years ago. So they've been indoctrinated by a culture and a way of life in Egypt that tells them, man, this is the way it's supposed to be. But yet they know something on the inside of them is telling them, God, it's got to be better than this. So they're screaming out in their hearts for more, how to not to have to live in Egypt. Okay? So they come up out of there by Moses' direction. And Moses wasn't a perfect man. Moses killed a guy, trying to get people free. But Moses had his own problems. So Moses brings the children of Israel to this place, and the goal of the wilderness experience was to prepare their minds to begin to realize who God was, who they were, and how they would be able to function properly when they crossed over into the kingdom. They had to get that world system. So this middle ground is where your mind transforms from being a worldly mind to a kingdom mind. It doesn't happen overnight. Even though your heart is changed, your mind has to be able to sustain success. That's why many people can come out of failure pretty quickly. They come out of it and go, oh, God, I'm the underdog. I come out, but can you handle success? Can you be okay when things are okay? Or do you have to have pressures of life to keep you at the cross, to keep you reading or praying? Or can you do it? Now, most people, it's hard for most people. I mean, that's just the way it is, because you need something driving us. That's how most people are. But God's never intended for us just to have problems to burden us. His intention was for us to be able to occupy and dwell and pass it on to the next generations. Making sense? Okay? So when they came up out of that place, the purpose was here. So most of them, obviously, they came out, didn't make it. All right, the whole generation died off because they was born in Egypt because they were here. Here's the challenge, in a good way. The people that Joshua was talking to, because Moses dies, the people that Joshua was talking to were not born in Egypt. These people were born in the wilderness. So they have a frame of reference of what their mom and dad said. but they weren't under the bondage of Pharaoh. They were under the tutelage and the mentorship of a generation of people that were in between two seasons. That makes sense? So your leader, your person you're looking up to, the person that's kind of mentoring you, the person that's kind of guiding you, well, they were born over there, right? So they had that, but they weren't there anymore, but they weren't quite here yet. So they heard of the promises, but they also heard the old story. And they saw people vacillating back and forth. Well, it's easier to go back to Egypt than it is to go forward. Well, no, I'd rather go forward. Well, no, I would go back, depending on hardship. So they learned to live in an environment, in a culture where families raised them of some days they were for God and some days they were not. Not that they were against him, they just doubted him. All right? I'm going to talk about this at 11 o'clock because this is kind of like your millennial group right now. Okay? So, and I'm going to hit that pretty hard. So when you raise up this way, you go, gosh, So they begin to, here's what happens. You begin to lose confidence in people if you're being led or directed. Let me just take it this way. This is drill down to your life. You take a family, a parent, mom and dad, or a mom or a dad, or mom and new dad, or dad and new mom, in-laws, or exes and or steps, right? You begin to, when you begin to lose, when you see them go through a transition and they're not all the way in, but yet they're not all the way out, people that sit up underneath them as family, kids, especially when they get to be teenagers, they begin to lose respect and develop their own opinion. And they lose respect because they go, I don't want to follow after them because they're not going in. And then they go, but I do respect them because they had a hard life, right? So they're back and forth on showing respect and not showing respect. So, and it's a tough position for a parent to be in, or a family or a leader to be in, when they're not where they're supposed to be, but yet they know they're not where they were, and they're moving people along in transition. And you got to be able to help people see transition and move in transition. Otherwise, they become stale or stagnant and want to move back, okay? They'll lose respect from you, and they'll rebel. They'll just flat out, they don't respect you. They don't want to hear anything you have to say. Why? Because they hear what you're saying, but I see what you're doing. So the kids could come together. Think about this. You got parents in the wilderness. You got children being born in the wilderness. Now those children are probably 15, 20 years old, okay? It's been 20 years now. And Moses has come up and said, guys, we're going to go across the land here of Jordan River. We're going to make it all the way in. And the kids are going, the teenagers are going, yeah, we've heard this before. Yeah, been down that road before. So they become cynical, and they become jaded in their view of following after somebody, a parent or a relative or a leader or whoever, a boss, whatever it might be, because they've heard it before. And then after a while, the kids are keeping their mouths shut, but they're walking around the same mountain going, have not we been here before? Haven't we been here before? And they begin to go, they talk to the brothers and sisters, and they begin to go, that's just dad. That's just mom. That's just Moses. It's just the way it's going to be. It's just the way it's going to. And they begin to think for themselves that this is the best it's going to be. And then they start thinking, and they get older, they begin to think, I'm not going to do it that way. It ain't happening like that. I ain't going to be all talk and no action. I'm not going to do it. Something's going to have to change. So you got to figure, you got to raise up. You got people raising up that are going, okay, I know the Lord is the Lord. Moses dies. These people are there. All of Moses' people that he brought out of Egypt died, but the children now have become adults. Okay? And now they're ready to go in. That's why Joshua looks at them, and Joshua said, here's the problem I have. I can't lead these people because they're different than the people in Egypt. It was a little easier for Moses to go to people in bondage, okay, and go in and say, man, come on, guys, let's go. I'm here to set you free. And they're looking for the first ticket out of Egypt, right? I mean, they were questioning and skeptical, but, man, we've been praying for this. Let's go. Let's get out of this place. So they get out. So it was easier. It's harder for a Joshua to lead a group of people into a place that never really was in bondage to begin with in Egypt. You're leading a generation of people that are already pretty confident because they see the lack of confidence in the previous generation. I'll do it differently. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put up with that. Steph called it one time, that generation is, there's no empty loyalties. They're not going to give you 20 years just because it's 20 years. Because you either go somewhere or we're out the door. Let's go. That's why you have so many different, this generation here of the last 20 or 30 years, we've seen a lot of divorces, is because that there's just can't be a lot of talk and no action, right? You just can't. And people there, the tail end of the last generation or this previous 2 decades ago, people would stay in bad relationships because, even though they were abusive, because they were taught to be loyal, right? But then it comes a time when you go, I can't do this anymore. I got to go. And then you'll cut, and it goes against everything that your people above you taught, right? But now there's more of them, more of the people that are broken free, even though now they don't know where to go. They just know they're not staying in that. It takes a leader like a Joshua rather than a Moses because they got to come up out of this thing. And they got to be led, and they've got to be told the truth because they'll know when you're not telling them the truth. And you got to tell them with firm conviction. You can't sell them. See, Moses could go to Egypt and say, here's the features and here's the benefits. You guys stay in bondage, or I give you an opportunity to come out here, and God's going to make you great people. Well, the features are, gosh, this is wonderful. We can stay here, or we can follow after Moses, take a risk, and the benefits are, God, we got to get out from underneath this mess. So guess what? They go. People in the wilderness are going, listen, I've been raised here. I don't know what it's like in Egypt. I've heard the stories, but we're winning the wars here. We're winning the battles. I don't mind. If we have to stay here, we'll stay here. But these people are going, I'm ready to go. So Joshua had to lead them a little differently than a Moses could. Because if Moses would have come over and tried to tell that same group of people that were born in the wilderness to go on into the promised land, and he tried to do it like he did them, like he did the the people, they would have rebelled on Moses and said, get out of the way. They'd probably killed him, moved on. It took a Joshua. Why Joshua? Because Joshua had already been into the land of promise with Caleb and tested the waters. Joshua and Caleb had a different spirit. Okay? They were going in. So they called the people together, and they said, but what Joshua had to have, though, was it wasn't a matter of just being a good leader. I know good leaders. You better be anointed good leader. Right? You need to be a parent, but you need to be an anointed parent. You need to be an anointed boss. Why? Because anointed means, I'm God, I need the same spirit that was on Moses. I need that wisdom. I need you to be with me and never to leave me or forsake. I'll go if you cause those people to respect me and that draw from me. But I can't go if you don't, because I'm not that good. Right? So Joshua has an encounter with the Lord when Moses died. Basically, he was saying this. This is going to sound strange, but he's saying, Moses, the law is dead. Joshua, Jesus, Yeshua, salvation, it's time to take him in. The law will take you to the end, but it'll never take you in. In other words, all your human effort and self-worth, self-works, will never get you in to what you're having, what God desires for you to have. Only salvation can take you into the promised land. Okay? So you have Joshua, Jesus. That's his name means Jesus, Joshua, salvation. So you got Joshua going, okay, God, if you're with me, I'll go. He says, I'm with you. And I'm going to make them respect you. I'm going to respect. Then he has an encounter with the people. But here's what God told Joshua. Here's Joshua's a fighter. Now, Joshua went over to the promised land. But Joshua looks back at God and says, man, he goes, I'm going to go, but I got to make sure you're here. Here's what God told him. He said, Joshua, you just better be a good courage, and don't have fear or doubt. Don't be fearful, and be of good courage. In other words, he said it 3 times. So that means he must probably going to be needing that. If God told him, don't be fearful, don't be afraid, be of good courage, in other words, you're going to enter into a battle over here to seize this property and land that I've given you all, this domain, this life, culture of life is over there, but it is not going to be the easiest thing you've ever done. And that's what happens when people sometimes get saved, They come up out of Egypt, and they go, whew, I appreciate that being off of me. But they don't realize that the real hard work and the hard effort and the hard life is not just being out there in the world. It's just as hard here when you've had an encounter with the Lord and you're trusting him to take you in, and you've got to allow God to completely restore your life and bring you into those promises, and you're standing here going, how do I help him along? And God's saying, well, I need your help, but I don't need your help. I want you to walk with me, but I don't want you to put your hands all over this thing. And that's hard when you walk here and you realize there's a promise for you and it doesn't turn out the way you thought it was going to turn out. And people get discouraged and go right back out here into the world, have to walk that whole pattern all over again. This generation that was on the earth then was different. Okay? Joshua says, we're going in. We're going to go in. We're going strong. And as we go in, I need God to stamp me, put a stamp of approval on me. And then I need you people to understand. Because it's one thing to have God on your side, but if the people rebel against God, they're rebelling against you. So then Joshua calls the people together. The people affirm Joshua and say, just like when God was with Moses, if he's with you, we're going to follow everything he's saying. The people that don't, we've got a problem. They'll die. Why? Because we're going in. We're ready to go. We're not going to repeat the previous generation's mistakes. It's just not going to happen. And they're ready to fight. They're ready to go. So now you have a generation of people that are expressing themselves in such a way that they're not going to sit still. It's going to get ugly or it's going to get beautiful. It may get ugly before it gets beautiful, but it's going to get. It's just not going to stay the same way. Okay? So here's what happens. So Joshua calls some people together. It was told to the king of Jericho. Turn it back to 1 if you don't mind. And we'll read that Joshua 2:1 again. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out 2 men from Acacia Grove to spy secretly, saying, go view the land. Go, especially Jericho. So they went and came to the house of the harlot named Rahab and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, behold, men have come here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country. So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, bring out the men who have come to you, who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the country. And I want to stop here for just a minute because I want you to think about this. Why in the world would Joshua have two guys go across the river and go into Jericho and scout that whole land, in Jericho especially, and scout out the whole land when Joshua himself had already been over there? Isn't that crazy? He already knew. Why did he? It wasn't for them to go, right? It wasn't for him to go. That journey and excursion wasn't for Joshua. It was for the people. He wanted them to get a little bit of a taste of really what it was going to be like when they crossed over that thing too. Joshua already knew. This is going to be good. But I need you to come back and build faith. Mm-hmm. So he goes in, and here's what's odd. What you think is strange, that of all the places in Jericho, they find themselves at Rahab's house. And there's nowhere it referenced this in the scripture, but I find it interesting that they go to Rahab. I'm not so sure that it probably isn't written. I'm not so sure that Joshua didn't say, hey, there's a harlot over there named Rahab. You might want to head over there. Me and Caleb have been there. We already know where she lives. We didn't stay there or anything, but we know where her house was, right? Okay? Because there was just too much documentation or detail, but it doesn't give the reason why they picked Rahab. And we just sometimes look over some of those things, but somehow there had to be some dots connected, you know? So the king sent to, so 2 guys come to Rahab's house. Rahab hides them, okay? And the king gets word that in Jericho, king of Jericho gets word that there are people from the other side that are coming here spying out. So the king sends to Rahab saying, bring out your men that have come to you. Who have entered your house, for they have come to search out all the country. Then the woman took the 2 men and hid them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it happened as the gate was being shut, when it was dark, that the men went out. They left at night. Where the men went, and I do not know. They're gone. They were here for a while, and they're gone. Where the men, I don't know. Pursue them quickly, because you can probably still get them if you go. Watch this. But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of the flax stalks of flax, which she had laid in order on the roof. Then the men pursued them by the road to Jordan. Look at this. These guys are going out after him now. These spies are going out after him. Or the Jericho army, or guys from Jericho, are going after him. And the two men are on top of her roof, but they're looking in the city for them. By the road to the Jordan to the fords, and as soon as those who pursued them had gone out, they shut the gate. Now, before they lay down, she came up to them on the roof. Now, watch this. I want you to listen to this conversation. And here's what she says to the men. I know that the Lord, now this is somebody already in the land of promise. She's already there. She never was in the wilderness, and she never was in Egypt. She never was in the wilderness, and she never was in Egypt, right? The only encounter she had of them, of that whole Israelite people, the Jewish people, Hebrew people traveling, was Joshua and Caleb had come across, and then the word of mouth and reputation. Now watch this. I know that the Lord has given you the land. In other words, she says, I know this is a fixed fight. I know you're going to take the land. I know it. That the terror of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. Think about this. She's telling these two. Now, I'm here. I got to go back here. You got to get this. I mean, this is important. I'm two guys. I'm 25 years old. My buddy's 25. Joshua picks us, and we go across the Jordan, and we're at Rahab's house. Now, keep in mind, my dad and his dad, my mom and his mom, my buddies, were born in Egypt. They died in the wilderness because they didn't go in. I wasn't born in Egypt. I was born here. But for the last 25, 30 years, well, 40 years we know, but just say I'm 25. For 25 years, we've been walking around this same place over and over and over and over again. And now I'm going, and I keep hearing the stories, well, we can't go over because God brought us out of Egypt just to kill us. That's what their parents would say. They'd say, well, God brought it. Moses, why did he bring us out here to eat? And they're carrying that tent around. And you saw last week when we read it. I mean, my gosh, I don't know how many stops they made along the journey going around in the mountain. Now, you got to realize if you're 15, 20 years old, you're going, we've been here before. Okay? And you're probably poking a little bit at your parents going, somewhere along the line, Dad, we got to go in here. I mean, somewhere along the line, this has got to change a little bit. I don't know how we can just keep going like this. So the parents start getting probably provoked a little bit by the children going, my God. I don't think if they were like my kids, now I don't know about y'all, maybe your kids aren't like this, but my kids are not going to just go with what I say without some sort of pushback if they realize this is kind of silly, all right? Maybe yours not like that, but mine are. They're going to push back. Well, I got a feeling these guys are going to push back a little bit and going, we got to go in. So now you got to think. They're standing in Rahab's house on the roof. She comes up to have a conversation with them, and she says, listen, the terror that is on you guys has fallen on these people here. Now they're all faint-hearted. They're scared of you. They're scared of your whole nation. They're scared of your whole nation. And I'm going to my buddy going, for 40 years, they've been afraid. Our parents and grandparents were afraid of the very people that were afraid of them. If they would have known that going in, they would have went in a long time ago. So sometimes when you're out here in fear of embracing something of your future, and you see all these reasons why it won't work, you got to be of good courage. Because the reason that fear is there is to help stop you from going in there. But if you'll pass through that fear, on the other side of the fear is the perfect will of God for your life. And all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. Watch this. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted, neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. In other words, your reputation preceded you. It went before you. It came over here and told us that we heard about the Red Sea. We believed it more than you all did. What if I told you your enemy believes more about your potential than you believe about your potential? What if I told you that your enemy is concerned more because of what God has done in your past to bring you out? He's more afraid of that, and that has already gone before him and brought that into his face, and he has to look at what God has already done for you. But what happens is we forget of the goodness of God when we face tension and pressure of life, but our enemy still remembers the goodness of God in your life. Isn't that crazy? That makes sense? I mean, if I'm one of those spies and I'm over there and I'm at Rahab's house, I'm going, and she walks back off the roof, and I'm going, can you believe this? They knew about the Red Sea. She knew, that whole land knew about the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and these two guys she's talking to weren't even born yet. That's how past the testimony, how far back the testimony actually went. So she's going, yeah, we've been scared to death. In other words, let me paraphrase it, put it in my own. We've been scared to death. We've been waiting on you all to come over here. We couldn't figure out what took you so long, because just several years ago, there was two guys named Joshua and Caleb came through that town, and Joshua and Caleb came over and said, man, they even took grapes back, clusters, and said, we're coming back. But when they got back, there was actually 12 of them that came, but 2 of them took the clusters. They came back. We expected you guys to come right and follow right after them. But y'all never did come. And I could see the 2 guys looking at each other going, yep, that's us. We had a generation above us that wanted to argue and debate it, but they didn't want to go anywhere. They wanted to be philosophers, but they didn't want to go anywhere. They wanted to talk about it, but they didn't want to change culture. They didn't want to advance. They always wanted to find the reasons why it wouldn't work instead of find the reasons why it should work. Right? This is good stuff. I don't know about you all, but I'm enjoying it. All right? But you got these 2. I'm just putting myself in these guys because I'm going to fast forward this thing at 11 o'clock, and I want to show you a generation or 2 generations of people on the earth today and the enemy and how this is all sizing up. And I'm going to try to bring it into 2017 or 16, going into 17, of how this ties together. This is a prophetic parallel of where the world is today. Yep. Whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump, Trump's still in the picture. Whether you're anti-millennialist or pro-millennialist, they're still in the picture. Right? And somebody's got to learn and know how to have the anointing of God on their life to lead people into a place they really want to go, even though they don't really act like they want to go. And they don't even know they want to go. Their heart's crying out. These guys are the same way. I am not staying in this wilderness very long. We're going. Now, let's just read on for just another verse or 2. So we know you're a God. So they knew and never even experienced God. They knew that he was God, Jehovah God, based on their testimony of the people that were coming towards them that weren't even them. Think about that. They believed more in God across the Jordan River and never encountered God, right? More so than the people that were traveling with God that come out of the Red Sea. Now, therefore, I beg you, swear to me by the Lord, since I have shown you kindness, that you also will show kindness to my father's house, and give me a true token. What's this? And spare my father, my mother, and my brothers, my sister, and all that they have, and deliver our lives from death. In other words, I want my whole house saved. So the men answered her, our lives for yours. If this is a covenant, if none of you tell this business of ours, and it shall be, when the Lord has given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with you. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the city wall. She dwelt on the wall. And she said to them, get to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you. Hide there 3 days until the pursuers have returned. Afterward, you may go your way. So the men said to her, we will be blameless of this oath of yours, which you have made us swear. Unless when we come into this land, you bind this line of scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you bring your father, your mother, your brother, and all your father's household to your own home. So it shall be that whoever goes outside the doors of your house into the street, the blood shall be upon his own head. and we will be guiltless, and whoever is with you in this house, this blood shall be on our head if the hand is laid on him. And if you tell the business of ours, then we will be free from your oath, which you made us swear. Then she said, according to your word, so be it. And she sent them away, and she departed, and she bound the scarlet cord, the red cord, in the window, which is kind of a type and shadow of the blood, okay? Now I want you to think about this for a minute. So they're having this conversation, and she says, listen, I know that he's your God, and I know he's the only God. She said, here's what I'd like for you to do. I want my whole household saved. Now, these guys were the ones born in the wilderness, right? They were not the ones that were born in Egypt when God slayed the firstborn, okay? Wasn't any of that. These guys had examples of fighting all through the wilderness. These young guys are now men. Now they're here, they're going, I'll tell you the deal. Here's the deal. All right, we're going to make an oath with you, but you're going to let us down by this rope. But this scarlet rope, this scarlet thread, which is representative like of the blood, when you have this hanging down from your house, when we come in this land, and when we come in this place, we're getting ready to take it over, it's going to be ugly. It's probably going to be some fighting going on, and it's going to get ugly. And as long as your family members are in your house, nobody's going to touch them. If two things happen, you keep them in your house, and you don't tell our business. Two things. Keep your mouth shut, and keep them tucked in your house. When we come in, if we see the scarlet thread, and you've kept your end, we'll keep ours. Your whole family will be saved. Okay? She said, good enough for me. She lets him down by the rope, puts the scarlet thread down, and it's just about to get pretty. Let's go. We got 3 more minutes. Can I keep going, or do you want me to stop? Okay. Then she said, according to your words, be it. And she sent them away, and they departed. And she bound the scarlet thread cord in the window. Okay. They departed and went to the mountain and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned. The pursuers sought them all along the way, but did not find them. So the 2 men returned, descended from the mountain, and crossed over. And they came to Joshua, the son of Nun, and told them all that had befallen them. Watch this. And they said to Joshua, truly the Lord has delivered all the land into our hands. For indeed all the inhabitants of the country are faint-hearted because of us. I want to stop there for a second. Why is it that 12 men go across the land and never encountered anybody and only looked at the fruit? They come back and they go, yep, there's a lot of people. We looked at, we saw big people. We saw giants in the land. We look like grasshoppers. But they got good fruit. So they bring back clusters of grapes and took 2 men to carry all this stuff back over. Why is it that 12 go over, never encountered anybody? Right? They encountered from the external look, but they never really got to hear what was happening. Because didn't you hear what the Rahab said? Man, we heard about what God did for you all in the crossing of the Red Sea. We heard about what he did and brought you out of that land. Our hearts have been faint-hearted for a long time. Then why is it when Joshua, Caleb, and the 10 others went over across the Red Sea, or the Jordan River, to scout out the land for Moses, how come nobody came back and told them the story? They're afraid. We got to go. You know why? Because they looked at the external and never got into the mind of the person. Salvation, Moses in the law, is all about external work. It's about your human effort. It's about sizing your ability up against the problem or what you're trying to attain. It's you against it. Yeah, I can tackle this. I think I can tackle this. But Joshua, Yeshua, salvation, Jesus, which is what Joshua means, Joshua knew we're going to send them in there and we're going to get into their mind. Let's see how they think. If you only look at your future and your challenges as what it looks like, you will become afraid. But if you ever tap in to the inner workings of what it looks like, you'll find out that the very thing that it looks like you should be afraid of is afraid of you. Those guys come back, and an entire generation wasted off because nobody had the sense enough to talk to somebody that says, hey, we're really afraid of you all. Salvation isn't just external. It's internal. What is really going on in the mind of the people over there? What are they thinking? when I read a book, I can read 1 or 2 books of an author that's written 10, and I don't have to read these other 8. If I can find out how he thinks, right, I can tell you how all these other books are going to go, because I know how he thinks. So when I'm reading a book, I'm trying to figure out, I'm reading the content of the book, but I want to know the thought of the author. How are they arriving at their conclusions? What's the drive that's causing them to write this? You guys know what I'm talking about. If you guys have ever watched a series of movies that's written by the same person, then you kind of have, the first couple ones, you kind of know this is the pattern of the author or the writer. So you just kind of, even though you're watching it or maybe even feel it, continue to read the book, you just kind of know how it flows, it goes, because you get in the mind, right? Well, Joshua was trying to get into the mind of the people. He sent 2. Go find out what's going on over there, especially Jericho. Why? That's the one we're taking first. That's our first battle. I don't want you to go, I don't want you to go get worried about everything. What's the next battle? The first battle is Jericho. Let's take the next battle. Because what happens is, if you know you got a series of complicated events that are taking place, and they're one right after another, if you're not careful, you'll start looking at the thing as a totality, as a whole, and it'll become overwhelming. But you need to take that in bite sizes. What's the next thing? What's the next challenge? What's the first thing on the agenda? What's the, I know people that maybe had some physical problems. One man particularly I know, and he was a master at this, because people would come in and try to get him to worry, and he had like a series, he had like several small surgeries he had to go through before he went for the big one, and there were several small ones. Well, when people would come in, they'd say, well, I got to go through 3 of these, and then I could go to that big one, and he would tell it. And he didn't faze him, so when I'd go visit him in the hospital and the family and friends would come in, they would go, oh my God, so you got 4 surgeries? He goes, no, I got 1. I got 1. And they said, well, no, you just said you had 3 of these and a big one. Well, yeah, I know what you're saying, but the one that's in front of me is 1. I just have this one. And they said, yeah, but the doctor told you there's a series. Yeah, whoa. I mean, man, you got to get strong for these 4. He said, I just need to be strong for 1. 1. And I'd stand there and I'd listen to this conversation, go back and forth, and I thought, wow, there's a lesson in that. And every time he wasn't mean or rude, every time they would just try to get him to see something that caused them to get in fear and concern and worry, he would just drill down and go, no, I have 1. And he only had to go through 1? Went through 1 surgery. 1 surgery. And he never went, and all the people came back in after the recovery, and the doctor come in, they said, because I was there, they said, this took care of it. We don't have to do any other surgeries. And all the people were going, wow. And when he came to from recovery, the family was all gathered around, and they were in there and said, Papa, you only had to do 1. You have to do 1. And I was waiting for this. I was waiting for him to go, I told you. But he never said a word. He went, yeah, 1 worked, didn't it? And I'm thinking, come on, have a little, do something with this. These people were all worried, had it all worried. It had me concerned. I'm going, he was going, no, I just have 1 in front of me. They're going, there's 4. And I'm going, there's 4. Is there 4? And he said, I just have the 1. I found myself over on their side, So I said, we walked out after the surgeries, everybody's 1. I said, man, 1 surgery is all it took. They said, yeah. And then there's always 1 in the family, isn't there? Well, we hope so. There's always 1. I'll see you guys at 11.